everybody, and welcome to the session on self-realization, self-actualization, and then branding yourself. Now, all of us don't necessarily want to be famous, but we do want to be acknowledged for what we are, and we also ideally would like to control how we're perceived and get the rewards for what we have achieved. So, in this session, I'm going to use some of our marketing techniques. We're going to understand really what you stand for, what are your assets, what you want to be, and then build a brand plan for you, which will help you to communicate your strengths and also be really clear about what you want to be for yourself. So, first, a quick introduction. Who am I? So, for those of you who don't know, and there are many ways to define yourself. So, I could describe myself in any of these ways and it would be all be correct, but obviously I position some of them stronger than others. But hey, I have an MBA from IIM Calcutta. I started my career as an engineer. I'm an author. I've written a book on no money marketing. I am a consultant and advisor on B2B marketing strategy. I'm an entrepreneur and I run a company called Paul Writer. I'm on the boards of companies such as Explayer Solutions, Bajaj Consumer Care, and Royal Orchid Hotels. But I'm also a parent, a parent, a spouse, a sibling, and a child. When you meet me, it depends in which context, and then you will see which of these perspectives I choose to show you. Like me, every one of you has multiple identities, and we all get confused when these identities clash with each other, and then the audience, who could be your boss, your spouse, your children, don't really know which aspect they should be relating to. Now, when I do this session, some people ask, can we be really good at so many things? Actually, no, it's really hard. Anything you want to be really good at, you have to dedicate yourself, you have to put in time, and something or the other will have to be reduced for you to be so good at that one thing. So most of us muddle along and we want to be good at maybe two, three things. So maybe you want to be the best parent, you want to be the best consultant, but maybe you're not so good at cricket or not so good at babysitting. There will be some that you can't be perfect at. And in this session, we'll talk about priorities and you decide which one you want to perfect. The first is about self-realization. When we do this for a brand, we call this a discovery process. Typically, we would go talk to customers. We would call that a customer satisfaction survey. We could do a dipstick, a focus group, anything to understand, who we are perceived as. What does this product do? What do people think about it? What are the improvements they want? And then we would also talk to people within the organization and say, hey, what do you think? Is this right? Is this what you want the brand to be? So it's a fairly complex process which takes in inputs from many sources. And it's very similar, or rather, it should be similar to something you do for yourself, where you start to understand the answer to who am I? And it's only when you can answer who am I that you can answer questions like why should someone want to be with me? Why should they want to hire me? Why should they want to pay me? So, first is to understand who am I. Second, you can talk about why someone should be with you in the context that you choose. And then the most important thing is what differentiates you. Why should they choose you and not all these other people? In the case of self branding, we also have to do this journey and understand what do we want to be. And it's not a very complex process, but it's something that you will continue for the rest of your life, which is why I believe that, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And today you have taken that first step in understanding what you want to be in the professional context, which is what we're going to talk about today. So let's, take a step back. What are my skills? So those of you who are in programming, don't laugh. I did this a very long time ago, and I don't know if I could still code, but hey, I have the certificate for it. So I know these languages. I have actually taught Unix and C in the days when mainframes were popular. And I've always had really good presentation skills. I really enjoy communicating. And I did, like everybody else, physics, chemistry, maths, economics, statistics. This was high school. And I've liked creative writing. I've always enjoyed it. I'm an author as well, so that's nonfiction. And later on, I started to specialize in marketing strategy and brand strategy. So if you ask Alexa, it will tell you, oh, these are my skills. Um, but why I put up this laundry list is not to say I have all this, real jumbled bag of skills, but to talk about how, amongst all of these, only one skill has been so helpful throughout my life. And it has often helped me to get jobs, keep jobs, and to add to my roles. And it's not the ones that you would think. It's not the programming. No, no. So you can take a guess which one is it, and you can have a virtual cookie if you're correct. So the one skill that has really, really helped me is presentation or communication. Um, it has put me in the spotlight. It allows me to communicate what I'm thinking really well. And my self realization is that amongst all of these basket of skills that I have, this one unusual or not really something that people would say, oh my gosh, you should do a degree in presentation skills, but that has actually shown up as my most valuable skill. So as a takeaway from this slide, I would like you guys to write down your basket of skills and then to introspect and say that this particular skill is what has really been useful to you in your career so far, and then make a note and see if you want to develop that. Now, this is a recurring theme for me, which is to identify and build on your strengths. And it's not me who said this. This is Virat Kohli. You can't possibly go wrong with him. He says that you should recognize your strengths and then work on your weaknesses. But today we're not even going to talk about your weaknesses. Um, you know, I come from a culture where, or a family rather, where if you said that I am not so good at maths, that is definitely the one subject that everybody's going to, jump on you for, put you into tuition, whatever it is, and work on it and work on it and work on it. Now, at some point in time, you also have to realize that if this is not your strength, just beating up and doing 10,000 hours of it or whatever is not going to make it your strength. There will always be somebody for whom it comes more naturally and it's going to be easier for them. So once you started working, I think the time is right for you to say, these are my strengths and I'm going to work on them. Now, this is not conventional advice. So when you do your appraisal, whether it's 360 or your boss or your HR team, they're going to write down something which is strength, weaknesses, and we're going to spend a lot of time about areas for improvement. But the fact is, I mean, that's a process, you go through it. But I think that you would be more successful, and also, the amount of self esteem and confidence that you would have if you were able to play to your strengths. So, if you look at the sports analogy, nobody goes to a fantastic bowler and says that you've also got to be the world's best batsman. You've got to be good, but you don't have to be that good, right? I'm in the team because I'm a fantastic bowler, not because I am the best batsman. So, similarly, you would need to identify the key strength, the ones that your big one, build on that, and then see where all you can apply that. So, if you're fantastic at coding, what are the other opportunities? So, we call them adjacencies. So, if you're in a particular team, is there a way to expand, move into another team? If you're a writer, what kind of stuff can you write? Do you want to specialize? What are the opportunities? But the main takeaway I want from this particular slide is that I want you to focus on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. We really have to recreate our image as to how we want it to be. After a point, we have to stop the process of keeping on wondering, discovering myself and so on, and just play to my strengths and create the environment that we want to see. So I've put these little dotted lines because ideally you should make a note of your strengths and also the opportunities just for those strengths. We are not going to talk about any weaknesses in this session. That's not the objective. You finish high school, you're done and dusted. Let's move on and build on our strengths. For me personally, big realization for me is that I actually didn't like maths once it went to a very high level. So even though I scored 100% in my 12th grade, once I went to engineering, I didn't really like maths, which was kind of okay because I did computer science. It was manageable. And then I discovered to my horror that in IIM Calcutta, we had a ton of maths as well. So to avoid that, I took every single course I could around marketing, anything that did not have, including rural marketing, any kind of course, but just did not want to do finance, just did not want to do marketing. Now, at the time, there were many people who advised me saying that you have to. And of course, there were mandatory subjects, which I did. But I just felt that, look, I mean, if you try really hard, you're still going to be at best average, below average. So it was better to say that, look, I really enjoy marketing and I love communications. Why don't I just focus on that? Later on, as I started working again, when you're in marketing, everybody comes and tells you, hey, you should be doing some sales. And again, it's like good marketing doesn't make me a great salesperson. I don't want to do that. I want to stay with where I am. And then a little higher up, and people come and tell you, but you should do operations because how will you ever be a CEO if you don't do operations? Now, operations is great, but I, for the most part of my career, worked in IT companies where the operations is really technical and very different from my core strength, which I defined as marketing. So again, it was like, okay, I'm okay if you don't want to make me a business head. I'm okay with all of that. Just let me sit in my little sandbox and play with my marketing. I do not want to do operations. And of course, there is consequence to it. And so when I had an appraisal with one of my really good bosses, actually, and we had this discussion, and he was like, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "Well, when I'm 40 or so, I would like to be a CEO." And he was like, "But Jesse, you don't have any operational skills, so are you particular about the kind of company that you want to be CEO of?" I was like, "No, not really. I just haven't thought it through, but I just want to be CEO." And he was like, okay, then I think you should start your own company. Now, it wasn't as simple as that. I did explore other opportunities, but um, if you say you're only into marketing and you don't want to do something else, then you do have to choose your spaces into areas which would work for you, like consulting, advertising, and marketing. And that actually was some of the thinking that went into my forming my own company. And well, it worked out for me, and I hope that this will inspire you to also think about your strengths and what you can do with them. Now, it's a crowded world out there, and it's not like a recent thing, but anyone growing up in India, you're in a lot of competition. Anything you go to, there are hundreds and thousands of people who want the same thing as you. Whether it's queuing up in your hostel for breakfast, or trying to catch a bus or a cab or even an Uber, we have to really stand out. In the workplace as well, this is true. So I often, when we talk about brand consulting, we talk about what's your superlative. So, are you the first cookie, the smartest cookie, the cookie with the most chocolate chips, the cheapest cookie, the cookie that's available in every store? I mean, what makes this particular cookie special is what we would discuss if we were defining a brand. And we call it the superlative. So you have to be the first, the latest, the biggest. You have to own one of those words. Now, in the corporate world as well, you have to know what you're the best at. Um, so this is actually an exercise in self-affirmation as well. And I'd love for you to be able to figure out that you're the best at something. And this matters a lot. I mean, you guys probably are on LinkedIn, and you can see that if you were to Google your name or even your skill set, 100 LinkedIn profiles show up as a hit. But no one has time to look at 100 profiles. When you write 3 pages of resume, who has the time for it? I mean, we are like goldfish. Our memories, I think, like 6 seconds or something. Our attention span is around the same as well. So you really have to be sticky. So you have to find out what are you the best at. Now, when I do this session, people say, oh, but I'm not the best at this particular thing. There are hundreds of people. So then you have defined it very broadly. You might have to narrow it down and find a niche that you can own. You could also look at saying, I'm the only person who can do this, which is possible. But if you can't find a single object or a theme that you can say, I'm the best or the only, you could look at a combination and say, I can do this and I can do that. I'm the only one who can do it in this time frame or this cost. And therefore, I am the only person who can do X, Y, and Z. You could also say I'm the highest paid because I do this. I'm the highest paid intern because, I wrote this pitch myself. But one way or another, you have to find that differentiator. Um, so I could never, marketing is a huge space. I can't really say that I'm the best at this and the best at that, but I could say that I specialize in B2B marketing, which is a niche. I'm the only person who has been a global brand manager for Infosys and chief marketing officer for Wipro. I can do low cost marketing, and I have a book that I wrote all about it. So you can take pieces of your expertise and cobble it together to become something unique. So, going back to my cookie example, you may not be the first cookie, but you could be the first cookie with whole wheat and with ghee from the Himalayas from a special white cow. So, but it's important to have the narrative that you are the best and you are unique. So before you leave this thought, write down this piece of why you are one in a billion and look at how you can translate that to your LinkedIn profile or any other professional context that you have. This is a slide or a thought rather that is something that always resonates when I share it with people, which is you have to ask for things because people don't automatically know that this is what you want. So sometimes, or most times, we're really shy and awkward about saying, I should get that promotion, or I should get that particular assignment, or hey, I could do three jobs. You don't have to pay me more, but I just love doing these three things. If you don't say it, then people can't give it to you. And the thing is, for example, when I joined Infosys, my only job actually was supposed to be to write a brochure. And a month, I came from advertising where you wrote a brochure pretty much every week. And so at the end of a month, I was kind of running out of things to do. So then I went and said, hey, I can help with the website. Later on, I said I can help with PR. A little bit later, it was, hey, I could do more brochures. I could do websites. So one by one, things started coming in, but every one of those things was something I asked for. It wasn't like someone reached out to me and said, hey, Jesse, we have this fantastic role addition for you. Would you like to add this? Didn't happen that way. If you want a title change, if you want a role change, anything, you have to go and ask, right? And that's something that, and the worst that can happen to you is that they can say no. And that's fine. If they say no to you three times, they feel a little guilty. They might say yes the next time. So my advice to everybody is, regardless of the environment, the situation, etc., think about why someone should say yes to what you want. Pick a good time and go and make that ask. And if they say no, ask them why they said no and what do you need to change in order for that to happen, and see if that's realistic. If it is, work on it. If it's unrealistic, then revisit your expectations that they're ever going to say yes. But the first part of the journey is to ask. This piece of advice came to me from my bosses, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this session is that I've been privileged to work with some really fantastic people, from Narayana Murthy to Nandan Nilekani to Rama Bijapurkar to Arup Kavan, Sudha Kumar. I mean, the list really goes on. And they each taught me something very valuable. And one of the insights that I had was that you can control the variables for yourself. And I'll give you a simple example of what I mean by that. And so when you do an event, and for most of my life, I've been arranging events and curating events, um, you cannot control how many people actually show up. Invariably, and anyone who's organized a wedding knows that either more people come or less people come. So you cannot control the actual number of people who show up. But it's very awkward when you have 100 chairs and only 50 people have come. Your event looks like a bit of a failure even before it starts. So the way around that is if you have 100 confirmations, you put only 50 chairs in the room. If you manage to get more people, then you rush them in and everybody thinks, wow, we weren't expecting so many people. So cool, so cool. Um, and if they are only 50, that's okay. Your room is still packed. So the visibility is controlled, the narrative is controlled. In other ways, otherwise, people also say that, look, I'm always late because my maid comes late. That's a common kind of an example people give, or I got stuck in traffic. Well, if you get stuck in traffic every day, you should be able to leave earlier. If you say that I can't because, so and so hasn't shown up, you're going to have to figure out an incentive for that person to show up or do whatever you want in time so that you can still be calm to do whatever you need. People talk about power failure, people talk about internet. You might have to invest, but you should have two connections. There are things you have to do if it's important enough to you. The picture I have here is Mark Zuckerberg, and he's famous for wearing pretty much the same color of clothes and the same style. And the reason is that you save a ton of time and money actually. If you wear the same stuff over and over and again, you don't have to worry about things matching, ironing, any of that. You walk in and you save a cool 15 minutes of mental space, and that's pretty important. I mean, if you're Mark Zuckerberg, your 15 minutes matters a lot to you. So this one is important. The second part is drive your destiny. So again, one of the tips I got from one of my bosses is that when you look at a role or a promotion, you don't just look at whether it pays more or has a better title. It should also be progressing you towards controlling more of your destiny. So what I mean by that is if you want to do certain things, if you see yourself as a certain type of person, then this job should help you to get there. And regardless of the pay and the title, if you do not have more autonomy in that job, then it's not a real promotion. So, it's ridiculous if you have a title of vice president, but you have to go to five people to get your budget approved. Or if you need to take a break in the middle of the day, you have to get permission from your boss. That's not a step up. That means that you are not controlling your own destiny. Now, people ask me, why did I want to be an entrepreneur? And the simple answer is that as an entrepreneur, you control more of your destiny than you do in a typical employee in an organization. And you decide why you want to do whatever, and you take the consequences as well. So if you don't want to do something and there is a cost implication to that, fine, that's your headache, but it's still your problem. You control your own destiny. As you go up in an organization, you should be able to control more and more of your destiny and reach a point where you're comfortable and you feel that you're in control of your life, and you know that there is some amount of flexibility and resilience both within the ecosystem and within yourself to cope with whatever is thrown at you. Um, but the purpose also is that you can drive your destiny only if you're conscious and aware and say that this is my destiny. So, takeaway from this particular slide is, can you write down what you think is your destiny? Where do you want to be? Because, if you don't know where you're going, then hey, anywhere you go is the right destination. So that's the thought I wanted to leave on this particular slide. And we come to the last bit, which is okay, if you have realized what you want to be, then how do you go out and make it happen? And At this point, I wanted to touch upon something else which has worked really well for me, which is when we talk about destiny, it's hard, right? I mean, not everyone wakes up and says, my destiny is to save the world, my destiny is to, make a greener tomorrow, so I'm going to specialize in that. Not all of us have that big destiny easy to handle. So, what's really worked for me is to look at someone and say, hey, I would really like that kind of a job. I would love to do that. And then work backwards and say, okay, what did they do to be there? And put a plan together and say, okay, this is something I really enjoy. 3 years from now, if I'm doing that, I will be so happy. And at every point in my life, that's kind of been a thumb rule for me. So I was a bit lost. I didn't know what I knew that I had to do engineering because in those days those were the choices. But my choice of which engineer was, hey, my brother did computer science, looked pretty good. He seems to have worked out okay, so I'm gonna go do computer science. And then I didn't actually like engineering once I started doing it, my first job. But luckily, I was sitting next to um, a lovely person called Kirti who was in marketing, and everything Kirti did was so much more fun than what I was doing. And that's when it's like, this thing called an MBA sounds good because then I can jump to marketing. And that's actually how I decided to go do an MBA in marketing and move away from engineering. And I had met a person in advertising that looked really exciting. So that's why I decided that my first job was going to be in advertising, and to the extent that I opted out of campus placement and did a stint in advertising for 3 years, right? And then in advertising again, I had a boss that I really admired, and it was like, if I could have that job in 5 years, that would be so cool. Um, and similarly in Infosys, it was like, okay, my boss's job seems really cool. I really want that. So over time, at every point, I have like a 5 year plan of who do I want to model myself on, and for me, that makes it easier to define the destiny along the way. I'm sure all of you have your own ways of doing it, but I thought I should share a little bit of my journey with you as well. So, when we come to self actualization, um, how do you get to where you want to be? And this is a typical interview question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And we all, say something. But if you really want to be there, you need to have a plan. Just like everything else, you need to write it down. So you need to write down your personal ambition. What do you want to be in 5 years, right? Write down the goal. Why do you want to be that? And it can't be just, hey, that looks like it pays a lot more. Remove money from the discussion in any of these things because money is very corrupting. It drags you along, shows you shiny objects, but it drags you away from your destiny entirely. So, first is your personal ambition. The second is your brand promise, as in, why should you get that particular role or whatever you want to achieve? What's your value proposition? What's your point of view? Why should someone give it to you? And this is something we would do in a marketing context where we say this is the goal and then this is the brand promise. Now, once you have your brand promise, you need to have a scorecard and a measurable action plan. So you have to have a check by check item. And you can Google, there are, spreadsheets which will help you to write down a measurable action plan and then you follow the action plan. What's really worked for me was when I got my first own cabin. My boss from advertising, and this was, I think, nearly 10 years after I had, met him first, he came into my cabin and was like, Jesse, you've reached the corner office, but please don't think that this is it and there's no more to be done. So don't slack off. I know you've worked hard to get here, but I want you to write down a brand plan and say that I'm going to speak at this event or I'm going to study this topic, I'm going to get certified, I'm going to win an award, make an action plan. And Arup was awesome because he used to check with me every quarter as to whether I had progressed. And just to keep him happy, I used to do stuff until it became a habit. Um, it takes time. It is not easy to keep going with this. But if you don't, what happens when you don't set a direction for yourself is that others will set it for you. So they will come and say, hey, I mean, this looks good for you, that looks good for you. Um, or circumstances will determine where you go, and but at the end of it you will just move from point A to point B to point C, may not necessarily take you to where you want to be. And this is something, whenever I've done the session, many people have said, look, I've spent 8 years, 10 years, and I met my objectives, I get good appraisals, but I don't know where I'm going. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere for me. And my answer to them is always, but where did you want to go? And did you have a plan on where you wanted to go? So um, take this, like a map, write down your goals. How will you get there? Why will you get there? What courses do you need to do? What credentials do you need? Anything. If you say that, look, I want to be a global role in 5 years, work on it. Why should someone give you a global role unless you have some specific asset that they need from there? So start working on it right now. Otherwise, in 5 years, you're just not going to have the set of attributes that people are looking for, right? So this is really what we do for any brand, where you say, this is the growth plan, here's how we're going to get there, and um, write it down, and then you check every quarter, is it moving, is it moving? So make a project tracker for yourself. That's essentially what I'm asking you for, right? And I want you to do this because I think if you're qualified, if you're ambitious, you deserve to control where you're going and when you get there. So it's kind of like, not having a map otherwise. So I really, really want you to create a map for yourself. Now, sometimes people say, hey, am I leadership material? Can I actually control my destiny? I'm from this small town. I don't know, my parents don't give me advice. My spouse doesn't give me advice. I really don't know what to do. The thing is that anyone can do this, right? Um, you should read the stories of, say, a Michelle Obama and her journey, and how, they work on each aspect because they know this is what we want to do. Um, and there is a technique to it. I mean, in branding, we do it all the time. You take a very basic commodity like salt, and then we make it special, right? So there is Himalayan salt, there's pink salt, iodine added salt, crystal salt, you name it. It's a commodity, but it's packaged in so many different ways. I mean, the packaging itself, I mean, I could have a spout, I could have a plastic packet, a paper packet. There are so many, so many things. Now, in order to do this, you first have to value what you are. And this is, again, like I said, we are culturally accustomed to talk about what we're not good at. It's almost like it's inauspicious to say, I'm really good at marketing, or I'm really good at maths, or I'm really good at Java, whatever it is. Culturally, we will always be, yeah, but I'm not so good at finance. So, it's like a small, that what we say in Tamil is a drishti pot. We like to put the little black evil eye thingy to cast it off. But that's not something we would do with the salt, right? We would brand the salt as if it was the best in the world. And that's what you have to do for yourself. You have to identify what you're good at and live with it. Um, people have met with Sundar Pichai, people I know his classmates. It's not like people spotted him and said, you're going to be the CEO one day. Yeah, sure, you're bright, you're smart, but then, so are another 1 lakh or 1 billion people in India. But with what he has, and he's been a techie, it's not like he, jumped in and got parachuted into the role. He worked his way up, but he did all the right stuff. He was good at what he did, but he also, tried to put himself out there. He went to alumni networks as speakers. He's been on Twitter, he's on conferences. Anybody can actually build a brand for themselves by using a brand map. So on the previous the diagram showed you how to build a map for yourself. In this, we can talk about a communication plan where you write down and say, hey, what will I do on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, any medium you pick, but you will not do it unless you have a consistent plan and say, I'm going to do this every week. Um, so for me, I'm not really keen on hard work, shall we say. I'd always prefer to find smart work. But one thing I've done consistently for 9 years that I'm really proud of is that I write a weekly newsletter. Now, this weekly newsletter, sure, I mean, it's not about who reads it. Sometimes I get 30% open rate, sometimes I get 10% open rate. That's okay. But what it does for me is two things. One, it forces me to study about what's happening in my area. I've got to know trends, I've got to structure something because every week I do it, and I have to discipline myself and say it has to go out. So I might miss the day, so I might not be able to do it on Thursday, but it definitely goes out on a Friday. And this is about keeping myself current and putting discipline on myself, saying this is important for me that, I'm consistent and I do this every week. Even if I forget other stuff or skip other stuff, this newsletter has to go out, has to go out. I even do it on holidays. So you also need to say, okay, I can't do all of this, but every year I'm going to do 5 webinars, or I'm going to attend this conference, or I'm going to get this one additional skill set, and make a plan and say that I'm going to build my brand in this particular way. Now, sometimes when I do this, people are like, but I'm, in this team and I don't really know how to do this. Why would they want to listen to me? Well, first is start small. I mean, see if you can get visibility within your team, then your larger organization, then look at alumni centers, networks, make yourself helpful. There are ways, but again, without a written brand plan, it's really hard for you to brand yourself. And it's not, the template is easy, right? I mean, you know that you should be writing stuff, a case study, an article, you know that you should be getting certifications and awards, but without a plan, we don't get there. And before I move on, I really want to talk about awards, because that's something where you don't have to tell the story, someone else is telling the story. And yet, we are very hesitant to apply for an award. We all believe that, someone's going to come and give it to us. Well, as a person who has run awards since 1999, I can tell you that most awards are won when you apply. That's the first step. There are exceptions, but if you want to win an award, the first step is to apply for an award. And you have to be kind of single-minded in researching and finding how that's going to happen for you. Just as, if you say, I'm going to write a blog every week, you have to do it. And from personal experience, I can tell you that I know many people who set out and said, I am going to do a PhD, or I am going to, become a blogger, and they've succeeded. But that's because they said, this is the one thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it consistently across these 3, 4 channels. And that's really important. And again, people often ask me, saying that if my work is good, won't I stand out anyway? Yes and no. You should. I agree that if your work is good, you should shine and it should stand out. But there are two kind of hindrances to that. So one is that people are really busy, so they're not paying that much attention to you. So unless you are significantly helping someone, whatever you're doing is not going to get noticed. That's problem one. Problem two is consistency. So today you stood out and someone noticed. Now, will they remember you the next time? Maybe, maybe not. And that's why you need to have a plan to consistently put yourself out there. In marketing, we would call it opportunity to see, and there is research for that. If someone doesn't see you like 3 times in 3 months, they tend to forget about your product. So similarly, if people don't keep hearing about you and your achievements, and you're steadily building up, visibility, then people don't remember, right? So you go for appraisal at the end of the year, people have already forgotten what happened at the beginning of the year, unless you have a steady rhythm of achievements through the year, spaced out and advertised by your brand plan. Also, when I did the session, I was quite surprised in one very kind of high-end MNC, where someone said that, isn't this being immodest? When I talk about brand, I have to say I'm really good at something. And we talked about it. We need to have a superlative. But his question was that, is this not being immodest? So it's not boasting, it's marketing. It is a thin line. I agree with you. But as long as we're not exaggerating and sticking to the truth, it isn't being immodest. And again, if you say that, hey, I don't want to talk about what I've done, I don't want to build a brand, that's fine. But then you also have to reconcile that there are certain opportunities only available for those who brand themselves. And if you're not there, you're not going to get those opportunities. Many times, the other the flip side of the coin is that many people in India today want to be entrepreneurs. And in order to be a successful entrepreneur, to a certain extent, you have to be a brand. A brand will help you to find partners, a brand will help you to get funding, and a brand gives you credibility when your company is yet to be established. So think about it and make a conscious decision. And, many people say, oh, but I don't talk well, I don't look good. Well, people overvalue what they're not, but undervalue what they are. So make a list of your assets and work with it. That's what we would do if we were selling salt. And surely you can agree that you're far better than that. So work on it and create a plan. Lastly, I want to leave you with this happy thought as well. Enjoy, Marty, which is what we would say in Bangalore is enjoy yourself a little bit. Um, we are also, the same way that we're hesitant to boast or brand ourselves, we're also a little hesitant to enjoy the success. We're always worried about what will happen tomorrow. Well, what will happen tomorrow will happen. And if you've controlled your variables, maybe they won't be so bad. And you can only mitigate, you can only be resilient as an individual. But you have to enjoy the present. So when things are going well for you, don't keep saying, oh, it's good now, but who knows what is going to happen next week. Enjoy it for a bit, manage your variable, write down your brand plan, work to your destiny, and you will feel so much more in control and comfortable with the future. So I wanted to share this thought today, and feel free to write in and ask your questions. Here's my email ID if you want to talk to me about it. This is a session that I generally do with a very interactive audience. But I don't want to record that because then, obviously the questions are personal. So I thought that in this way, I could make this content available to more of you. And I'm available on Twitter. You can easily find me there. I have a Facebook group called CMO India. Find me anywhere. You can ask me questions. If you want help in putting together your brand plan, I can share, more templates and so on. So I do hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to post any questions in the comment section and I will try and respond to you. I've enjoyed putting this together, and you've helped me to build out my brand plan because my commitment this month is that I'm going to work every week on a new video. It's a new medium for me, and I'd love to have your feedback for it. Thanks so much for spending this time with me, and I hope you'll come and catch me again on another video. And in the meantime, have a fantastic year ahead.